I want to be clear what I'm talking about with distribution. First of all, regardless of what we're measuring, we usually refer to them as scores. I can have a score on an age scale, which would be my age. I can have a score on a test scale. I can have a score on a personality survey. Whenever I use the word score, I'm referring to those data points. Remember that we are looking at the frequency right now when we're talking about distribution. The distribution is talking about how the points or scores are spread out over that range. Look at the graph for A. The points are spread out over a wide range, and in the middle there were more counts of each score, although not too many more, especially when you compare that to graph B. That range is very small, and look how large the count is for the scores in the middle. There were a lot of frequency. The frequency is really high of each of those scores in the middle. This is why we refer to the distribution shape. When we talk about the distribution, there are always three pieces. First, we can talk about the shape. Second, we can talk about the average or the mean, which is what we're talking about when we're talking central tendency. And finally, we can talk about the variation in the scores. Or are they clumped together, or are they spread far apart? Anytime we're discussing a score, it has no meaning just as an isolated score. It's meaningless until we know what the scale is and where that score falls in the range. Think of the number 27. It doesn't mean anything unless you know what the range is. Until you know where it falls in the distribution, you really can't even use the information. If 27 is a score on an exam that ranges from 0 to 30, that meaning or that inherent value of 27 is much different than it is if it's from an exam with a range of 0 to 700. So when we're talking percentiles, this is one way of helping you know where the score falls in that distribution, whether it falls near the top with lots of other scores beneath it, or whether it falls near the bottom with just a few scores beneath it and most of the scores above it. So this is what we call a percentile. The 60th percentile means that that score, that 27, we'll go back to that example, is at the 60th percentile, then 60% of the scores on that test or that scale or whatever you're using are at or below it. If that score is actually at the 80th percentile, then it's way higher, and 80% of the scores are below it. If I now tell you that 27 is a score at the 25th percentile, then that means it's way down near the bottom, and only 25% of the scores are at 27 or lower. Remember, we're talking about the frequency of each score. But if I tell you that 27 is at the 80th percentile, 80% of the scores are below it. So 27 is much higher in the ranking.